This is for the family of Maddie Clifton.
On November 3, 1998, 8-year-old Maddie Clifton came home from school in Jacksonville, Florida, and begged her mom to let her go outside to play. Her mother finally agreed and allowed Maddie to go outside to play as long as she stayed within the neighborhood and came back by dinner time. Once dinner time came and Maddie still hadn't returned, she sent her older sister, 11-year-old Jessie, to go find Maddie. After searching everywhere and failing to locate Maddie, Jessie ran back to her house and let her mother know. Immediately, she contacted neighbors and went out to search for Maddie along with neighbors. A week later, on November 10, 1998, the body of 8-year-old Maddie was found under her 14-year-old neighbor's bed. She had been there for 7 days. What happened on the evening of November 3, 1998? Maddie was known as a well-behaved young girl, as she always stayed out of trouble and listened to her parents. She was a good student and loved to dance and play sports. On November 3rd, after knocking on all the neighbors' doors, Maddie proceeded to play alone as everyone had declined her invite to play. Eventually, she was joined by another young boy and one of the older neighbors, 40-year-old Larry. The three of them played golf for a while until eventually they ran out, and Maddie agreed to run over 3 houses to her house and fetch more balls. Her older sister Jessie confirmed this story as she saw when Maddie came home asking for the balls. After failing to find them, she left frustrated. That was the last time she ever saw her sister. According to Larry and the other boy, she never returned, and eventually they each went home. Once Maddie failed to make it back for dinner and they failed to find her, they decided to report her as missing. The police began talking to all the neighbors and none of them saw Maddie, nor reported seeing anything strange like a car or a person. This caused police to think that the person that took Maddie might have been a neighbor. The first and most obvious suspect was Larry. They found it strange that a 40-year-old man was spending his free time playing with children. He also had previous charges of sexual assault, none of which had involved children, but police still found it alarming. The charges, however, were believed to have been false, as they were later dropped. The neighbors vouched for Larry, saying that he was a good man and that he helped all of the neighbors by watching their kids when they couldn't. The kids loved him and he only spent time playing with kids as he missed his own children who were now grown and moved out. Plus, he had an alibi as he was with the other boy while Maddie left to get the balls. Since according to Jessie, Maddie did in fact make it home, that means that she went missing within the 30 seconds that it takes to go from her house to where Larry and the other boy were at. After days went by and still no sign of Maddie, police decided to bring in the FBI. They believed that it was possible that this was a personal attack towards the Clifton family, and that it was possible for the person to return for Jessie. This caused the FBI to assign officers to be around Jessie 24/7, until it was confirmed that she was safe. Thousands of volunteers were searching for Maddie, and finally on November 10, 1998, Maddie's body was found. At around 8 a.m., while the neighbor across the street was cleaning her house, she decided to enter to her 14-year-old son's room to clean it as a terrible smell was coming from his room, and she assumed it was because he hadn't cleaned his pet's cage. This woman was Melissa Phillip. Upon entering, she noticed a puddle of water beside her son's bed. Believing that his waterbed was leaking, she decided to check it. After pulling off his mattress and taking a look under his waterbed, she found the half-naked body of 8-year-old Maddie Clifton. She was immediately filled in horror, and after standing there in shock, she ran as fast as she could across the street to the Clifton home, where she proceeded to tell an officer at the house what she had discovered. The officer called for backup, and shortly after, they entered the Phillips home and straight to the 14-year-old boy's room, where they found a decomposed body under the bed, shoved in the bed frame. They immediately went to Joshua Phillips Middle School and arrested him for the murder of Maddie. Immediately, he began talking. He said that Maddie came over and asked him to play. He hesitantly agreed, and they went to his backyard to play baseball. While playing, he accidentally strikes Maddie in the eye with the ball, and she began screaming in pain as she began to bleed. He panicked as he didn't want anyone to hear, since he wasn't allowed to have friends over while he was home alone. He was also not allowed near the Clifton girls. This caused him, in his moment of panic, to drag Maddie to his room, where he proceeded to strangle her in order to shut her up. He strangled her with a cord for approximately 12 to 15 minutes. After she passed out, he grabbed the bat and began beating her head with it to make sure she didn't wake up. Once seeing his father's car pulling in the driveway, he freaks out and hid her body under his bed. He then went out and went on with his day. Later, when he came back into his room, he heard Maddie moaning and once again freaked out since his father might hear. He grabbed a small knife and proceeded to cut her throat and stab her multiple times in the neck, and then eventually covered her again. It is believed by experts that even after being strangled, beaten, and stabbed, that she was still alive and sadly passed away slowly and painfully. The police found many air fresheners in Joshua's room, most likely used to hide the smell that Maddie's body was starting to give off. They also found shoes with blood spatters as well as the ceiling. On the back of his bed's headboard, they found a picture of 11-year-old Jessie Clifton, Maddie's older sister, who Joshua had an obsession with. In case you forgot, I previously mentioned that one of the reasons Joshua freaked out when Maddie started screaming is because he wasn't allowed near the Clifton girls. Let me explain why. Previously, Joshua had broken into the Clifton home multiple times and stolen things from Jessie, such as the picture found behind his headboard. Because of this, Maddie and Jessie's parents did not want Joshua near their daughters. Joshua claims his father was an alcoholic and drug addict who was abusive towards him and his mother. This is why he was so afraid of him. The police weren't believing Joshua as his story did not check out. Maddie didn't have signs of being hit in the face with a ball. The only injuries she had was of the cord, the bat, and the knife. Therefore, it is believed she was purposely lured into Joshua's home and then attacked. This was believed to have been premeditated as Joshua had been watching 30 minutes before the attack. Maddie's body was also found half naked, but with no sign of sexual assault. It is believed that she asked for golf balls, in which he used as an excuse to get her to his room, where he tried to molest her, and after she began screaming, he proceeded to strangle her. Joshua was found guilty and barely missed the death penalty thanks to his age. He was sentenced to life in prison. He ended up finishing high school and eventually got a paralegal degree, which allowed him to help other inmates end their cases. He even helped many of his inmate friends lower their sentences. A few years later, he was asked to write an apology letter to the Clifton family, but he denied and instead asked to apologize face-to-face, as he wanted them to know that he was sincerely sorry for what he did, but the Cliftons denied. Eventually, Jessie grew up and agreed to meet up with Joshua, but his legal team did not allow it. As of right now, Joshua swears he has changed and that he wishes he could take it back. He is currently appealing his sentence, and the next decision will be taken in 2023.
I've wanted to say this for a very long time. I don't pretend to know or understand your pain or to grasp a void that I have created in your lives. Many times throughout this journey, I came dreadfully close to ending my life just to escape it all. During these times, I was embroiled in a flurry of emotions and feelings. Guilt, despair, pain, hopelessness, fear, and shame. Mostly because I couldn't stand to put my mother through any more trauma. She's been through enough. There were times that I was angry at her because I couldn't end my pain because of her love. Yet now, I'm eternally grateful to her. I'm grateful to her because as I've grown up, I have learned the value of life. I've learned to see the beauty and joy in a world full of strife and experience the truth of unconditional love. I wish to God that I could have known this or understood it when I was 14. Had I then, none of this would have come about. I had no clue what life meant, what death meant, nor the depths of suffering that could follow one act. I had no inkling of how long that suffering could last. I hadn't lived long enough to understand the time involved or what really suffering was. I did something horrible. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what happened. Even now, after all these years, it is just unfathomable that all this could have occurred. It tears my mind asunder to know that I stole such a precious life from you, from the world.